there, welcome to Cooking Our Way. Bruce, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. What are we're doing the bread show today. We're going to be making bread.
Yes, we're here today to let you know that the days of relentlessly shopping and standing in long lines for fabulous gifts are over. Overwhelming popularity awaits you from both friend and foe alike.
Oh.
Well, you might have a few foes out there, Bruce. So listen, I have warmed up 1.5 cups of milk, and I've let this just calm down to a nice lukewarm temperature. So to start off our bread, we are going to add 2 tablespoons of active dry yeast. Okay, 1 cup of very, very warm water, which is going to help the yeast get going. And to help him really get going, the Gatorade of yeast, we're going to add a tablespoon of sugar. Now we're just going to mix this together. We've got to wait patiently for about 6 to 10 minutes until this is actually going to froth up. You'll actually start smelling it, and then we get back to the bread making.
Now, yeast is actually a plant, microorganism. It's a fungus or a fungi. Hey, what do you call a mushroom that buys you drinks whenever you go out with them?
A fun guy.
To be with, yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Anyway, it reproduces by budding, and it's really this is dry yeast. This is the yeast that's all dried out, and there's millions and millions of cells in there. And all it has to do is get in the presence of water and sugar, and it starts to metabolize the sugar, and it makes carbon dioxide, that's the bubbles, and alcohol. So bread dough has an alcohol content to it. Once you actually bake it, the alcohol gets evaporated away. Those of you who remember the beer show, we use yeast for a whole different thing. It's kind of a different yeast, it's brewer's yeast, which is a slightly different strain. And we like to use the liquid yeast when we do beer too. It's a little more pure and clear and everything. So, what do we got to do? We got to wait a little bit?
Yes, 6 to 10 minutes. Okay, as you can see, this has frothed up beautifully, or as Bruce was explaining, the carbon dioxide is having its own little party. So listen, the first bread we're going to make for you today is my world famous cinnamon raisin bread. So right here, we are sifting together 4 cups of all-purpose flour, and Bruce is going to set up our little mixer there. Now I'm sifting it through here just to make sure there's no lumps in the flour and to make sure it's easier to work with. And to that I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm adding it directly to the flour so the salt gets a bit buffered because, believe it or not, salt kind of decreases the inflatability of your yeast. So one of my little tricks, I'm going to put some cinnamon right on top to coat the top of the yeast mixture.
I always think of the book Doom when I smell cinnamon.
Oh yeah?
Yeah,
Maybe
the spice was cinnamon.
We could have Sting on one of our shows. So Bruce, if you would be fabulous enough, I have 3 room temperature eggs here. If you could just add those right into there.
Now the eggs tend to rise better when they're room temperature?
That is correct.
Isn't that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
So I always try to use room temperature eggs.
Yes.
I'm not going to try to break it with one hand because I don't want to get shells in there.
Yeah, or like
Look,
what was
look
the
at
movie
it. Ooh, it's
with
going
Audrey
down.
Hepburn? It's all in the risk. Oh, that was great. Okay, now next to that we have our 3 eggs. Here's my cup measure. We're going to add, actually if we want to turn this on to start getting it rolling.
The kitchen tractor.
The kitchen tractor. We need 2/3 of a cup of sugar. So we're going to have 1 and 2. Fabulous.
Oh.
Now, we add
already.
1 stick also of room temperature butter right in there. Room temperature again, so it folds in beautifully. Okay, now comes some of my own secret recipe ingredients that are not typically found in your, store-bought cinnamon raisin bread. We're going to add 2 teaspoons of brown sugar. This is dark brown sugar. Okay, and a little dash of vanilla. It has to be pure vanilla. Don't use imitation vanilla. For a couple of bucks extra, it's really worth the extra.
It's like that chocolate thing. There's vanilla flavor extract and real vanilla extract. And the real vanilla extract, that's the stuff we want.
Exactly. So, next comes our raisins. We have 1 cup of raisins, and as you can see, I've added a bit of flour around these. This is going to add a bit of grip to the raisins so they don't all sink to the bottom of the dough. So in with those.
Also helps separate them too, because they do have a tendency to stick together.
That's correct. That's correct. And we don't want any lumps. Okay, now here's our milk. It's lukewarm. It's We're going to add that in also.
You know, something about the yeast in the water. Yeast has got to be, the water's got to be at the right temperature. It's got to be warm, very warm actually. A good rule of thumb is the threshold of pain on most people is 125 degrees.
Yes.
And yeast is like in the same parameters that we can live in. You know, it gets too cold, you don't like it. It gets too hot, we don't like it. If it's over 125 degrees, that's too hot. So when you're scalding your milk or heating up your water, stick your finger in there and say, whoa, that's too hot. Okay, it's too hot.
Okay, now I'm gradually adding the flour.
A little bit at a time.
A little bit at a time. Now the beauty of this recipe is you can really alter it a bit to your needs. For example, I have a friend who doesn't like raisins, so don't add those. You can also add walnuts, even go a little crazy, maybe some maple syrup. So really, I mean, once you've mastered the basic techniques of this bread, you can really do anything you want with it. That's where I came up with adding some vanilla and brown sugar, because I happen to have a bit of a sweet tooth. So that's what we're doing here. So we do have a lovely dough that's forming. Okay, we've done all of that. Now we're just basically going to wait until all of the flour is incorporated with the mixer. You want to be careful not to overmix it because the glutens in the flour are going to get, you know, tough, and you don't want tough bread. So this is looking nicely. Okay, we are just going to unlock that. Make sure we grab the sides with your spatula. Okay. We're going to take off our mixing blade, scrape all that off, and we're going to give one more stir with our spatula to make sure all the flour has been correctly incorporated here. Because next what we're going to do, I am a daughter of modern technology, so I'm going to use our dough hook instead of kneading it. So this is like, watch this, ER in the kitchen. Dough hook, stat! Thank you, doctor. Okay, so we're going to plug this guy up here. Now this is going to need, we're going to again leave it on a low setting for about 5 to 6 minutes. You're going to notice a difference in the dough. It's going to become smooth and very elasticized.